Welcome to the Atheist in Recovery podcast, where we talk about finding hope in recovery. And now your host, Dr. Adina Silvestri.
Hello, guys, and welcome to episode 18 of the Atheists in Recovery podcast. And today we're talking with music man Bill Protzman. So this was a pretty interesting episode. It was recorded when California was in one of its very destructive wildfire weeks, and so Bill talks a little bit about what that was like living in California during those wildfires. And we talk about music as a healing tool and how music really saved Bill when he encountered these big emotions. And so I hope that you find this interesting and informative. On to our guest, Bill Protzman. His volunteer work has included board positions with Guitars for Vets and the San Diego Veterans Coalition. He has been instrumental in connecting thousands of military service members and veterans with honor tickets to the largest healing music organization in his town, the San Diego Symphony. Organizations like Consumer Action, the Society for Financial Education and Professional Development, 211 San Diego, and the American Music Therapy Association have all been delighted with his keynote presentations. If you go online, you can read his articles at Fox News, Your Tango, The Good Man Project, Psychology Today, and PracticeHeartSkills.com. For his foundational work, establishing music as self-care, he has received an Inspiring Hope Award of Excellence from the National Council for Behavioral Health. You'll find his first book at Amazon.com, titled More Than Human, The Value of Cultivating the Human Spirit in Your Organization. I hope you enjoy this very musical episode with Bill Protzman. Bill Protzman, welcome to the show.
Hey, Adina. How are you today?
Good. I'm very good over here in Richmond, Virginia. What's it like in California?
Well, in our tiny little corner, which is San Diego, there's some clear air. There's no wind. There aren't any fires burning.
Perfect.
It's whatever you guys are hearing out there about California. It's crazy in most of it. People without power on purpose. It's like the third world all of a sudden.
Wow.
And I'm very grateful that is not affecting me too much down here in sunny San Diego.
Yeah. I forgot to mention that I'm going to be there in 3 weeks, but we could talk about that after the show.
It should be beautiful while you're here. Fall's always a great time.
Yeah. So I wanted to start with a fun fact that I learned about you in preparing for this podcast show. There are a lot of fun facts about you, but we'll start here. You were recognized by the National Council for Behavioral Healthcare with the equivalent of an Oscar for artistic expression in 2014. Can you tell us about that?
Isn't that crazy? What's a piano player doing in a behavioral health environment, let alone as an award recipient, right? National Council is this huge thing, as you probably know. Anybody who's in the business, I think, probably knows. They're one of maybe two, NAMI's another, but National Council on Behavioral Health is this nationwide, perhaps continent-wide organization of people who provide all kinds of behavioral health care, from independent therapists to organizations that do big stuff, like for populations that have massive behavioral health care requirements. I don't know if governments belong to it, but that night there were some governments in the room. There were agencies there, as well as organizations, and there were 5,000 people in the room. It was crazy. I had no idea, right?
Did you ever expect you would have landed there, looking back?
I never expected. The agency that I volunteered for at the time nominated me, and we just sort of put the nomination in together with however many other. I think there's hundreds of them every year, and from those applications, they select about 20 recipients. So I was there as an individual, and I was there because of the work that I've been doing, teaching homeless people how to use music as a tool.
Wow.
and nominated and selected. It's like, this is crazy. So I got to play the piano for all these people and give a short thank you speech. And what an incredible experience. Washington, D.C. is this fantastic hub of all kinds of activity. And to be there, I think Hillary Clinton was one of the speakers that week. There were just some incredible people that came to talk. So it was a great experience and sort of unexpected to be, you get recognition along the way for various things if you're doing stuff that's good. But that one was really, that was really off the hook. It was really amazing. Yeah.
That's so great. Yeah. So I want to bring you back in time to the very beginning. Take a little time machine and talk about your spiritual background from childhood. Give us a framework for us.
Sure. I thought a long time about listing this on my LinkedIn profile, but I went ahead and did it anyway, because I think our journey is all part of who we are. And to ignore any part of that doesn't seem authentic to me. So I was raised in a religious tradition that actually believes in spiritual healing. And it's called Christian Science. It's still out there. Mm-hmm. And that gave me from a very early age this idea of being able to care for myself, as opposed to going out and finding an expert. Christian Scientists don't go to doctors, or they didn't back when I was growing up. So instead of going to a medical care professional for help, I would pray. And whether or not that worked isn't really the question here, but it's the mindset around it. Because I think that one of the things that we need these days is to be more self-reliant. We depend on a lot of experts, and those experts in their good intentions have gotten us into things like the opioid crisis and endless wars, and pick anything. The experts really know what they're doing because they've got the research and they can answer all the questions. But oftentimes there are other questions that they don't get around to answering.
Right.
And I fortunately didn't grow up in an evangelical church, but I know that part of the world's issues are a sort of fundamentalist approach to things, where instead of thinking about it yourself, you sort of give it up for somebody else to tell you what to do. And that mindset has gone just about as far as I think we can take it. So as a kid growing up, I had this built-in self-reliance when it came to my healthcare. And for many other things too, I would find myself hitting my knees. But as I became older and I don't know, I want to say wiser in a way, I realized that this tension between relying on a more fundamentalist concept of the universe, where it's written in a book someplace and you believe it, versus a more I want to say hands-on, experience-based concept of the universe, there was a tension in that, and that tension would have to resolve for me and play out in my own life. And that idea of tension and release is very fundamental to the way that music works. So looking back now, I can say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I was raised in this self-reliant place where I'm perhaps more objective about the way things are in reality and can take a more authentic look at them, versus being raised in a way that said, oh no, this is the way the universe looks and you have to believe it because it's true. And then being faced with all these conflicts that resulted from my life not matching up with the way that I was told it was. Does that make sense? It's a wonderful conflict. And in my experience with the physical world and with music, I've started to realize that this is the fundamental thing about life, is this tension release, this thing that we need to resolve. Is it because I can observe it that it is true, or is it because I'm told that it is true? And of course, when you look at science, the great investigative issue of science, which fascinates me because I'm one of those thinkers, I like to think things through and reach a self-evident conclusion. But the fascinating thing about science is, first of all, that they're exploring anything at all that's unknown, like consciousness. The science behind consciousness is fascinating to me, or even emotion. And that scientists are the people who can say, this is as far as we've gone, and we don't know this other stuff, but we're very curious. And for me, that just seems like such an incredible way to be in the world, higher power, quantum gravity, whatever you want to call it, even if it's called God for you, that's fine. I don't care. What matters is that we're all walking along the investigative road together. If you're not on that road, it's very difficult to work with you because your preconceptions often get in the way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm owning my own preconceptions, having been raised in the religious tradition I was, and also saying, and there's something else that my religious doctrine, dogma or whatever, didn't answer, and that I want very much to investigate what that is and find out what it is about this thing called music that is so great for our behavioral and mental and emotional and even spiritual care. So I find myself more curious than not, but also very grateful that I started in a way that was all about self-reliant care, like looking to yourself first as a question about how do I proceed from here.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make any kind of sense?
Yeah. So I'm actually wondering what it was like to break away from that religious upbringing.
Well, that was easy. That's the easy part.
That was easy. That was the easy
part.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And I don't mean to impugn anybody on this or anything, but it's obviously a Christian tradition that I was raised in. And at one point, I think it was after I got divorced, I found that the whole church was like turning against me. And I thought, well, wait a minute. Christianity is all about love. Where's the practical love here? What's going on? And having been a belonging in that environment for so long, to have it then turn around and no longer accept me because of a choice that I made was the obvious way that I left it. Okay. It's just like, okay, well, there's no love here. Clearly, this is just words. And I need the real thing.
Yeah. 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 And I've heard that in so many other cases. And that's unfortunate when all you really want to feel is belonging, and especially in those stressful times.
Yeah. When you're in a dark place.
When you're in that great place. Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of not great places, maybe you could talk a little bit about how your upbringing had led you through dark times.
Sure. So my mom was my first piano teacher, and very much in the religious tradition the whole of her life. But she was the first one to begin to teach me how music works. And by that, I mean that there's a way to engage at the piano or at your instrument, if you're a singer, whatever, where you're able to open to a wider emotional range than might be allowed in other instances, like around the dinner table. You could make big emotion happen at the piano, but you couldn't actually make that big emotion happen at the dinner table because that was a more controlled environment. And I know many religious traditions are very controlled when it comes to emotion, and there's a sort of a tendency toward keeping everything under wraps, so to speak. Well, that's fine. But in the real world, emotion is just as present as it is when you're playing the piano or making music on your instrument, whatever that is. So what Mom did for me was to offer me this safe place where I could have these big emotions. In fact, it's my job. If I can't bring big emotion to the music that I'm making, it's going to sound boring and flat. So there I was in this amazing, interesting push-pull between what was allowed at the instrument and what was allowed everywhere else. And that framework kind of set me up for the biggest challenge of my life, which is how do I, as an authentic individual, not just a musician, use those big emotions in real life, so to speak, when I'm not at the piano. So that's what got me started. And of course, religious traditions being what they are, they tend to compress you into some narrow little box. And I've never been one that fits in the box very well. So that didn't work. And to be where I am now and able to say, oh gosh, look at these big emotions and how wonderful they are and how useful they are, regardless of whether you like them. They're amazing things. That's a huge journey. The sort of crisis in that event has been chronic depression for me, somewhat of suicidal ideation. I think we need to begin to talk more honestly about these things that are stigmatized.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we've gotten away from the stigma of big emotion, and now we're talking about post-traumatic growth instead of post-traumatic stress disorder. So I think the conversation's advancing. And as we advance that conversation around suicide, I think we'll get to a place where the understanding of suicide is as a symptom of something else, a symptom of some other unresolved conflict or some deep thing, a big emotion perhaps, that needs some expression, needs a healthy way of passing along, passing through and leaving us. So my experience of suicide was exactly that, being able to go deeply into a piece of music and just know that I'm safe. I'm sitting there in the chair. I don't have to do anything about this right now, but just listen to this music maybe one more time before it's all over. That pretty much saved me, Adina, because I allowed the emotions. They just came up, and over hours they passed. And that practice now is part of what I use when I encounter big issues that need an emotional release of some kind or that need emotional information. I do that with music. And allowing the music for the emotions maybe that I don't want to come up has helped me realize that, that you can let the not so great energy of those emotions pass. And what you're left with at the end of that is this incredible power. It's like fuel if you use it properly.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of burn off the stuff that's harmful, and it leaves you with this amazing reservoir of energy that you can do things with, good things with,
Yeah, so music definitely saved you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. So let's talk a little bit about your work with your company called Music Care. Maybe you could start by telling the listeners the difference between music therapy versus music care. Would that be a good place? Yeah.
Of course. Great question. It's a great starting place. Music therapists, I'm not one, but music therapists are, they have advanced education, masters or PhDs. Most of the time they're board certified or licensed, depending upon the country that you're living in. In America, they're both board certified and licensed in many states, just like regular therapists would be. And if you're out there and curious about this, it's possible that your insurance program may cover music therapy. So check into that. It's psychological care. So check with your insurer and see if that's something that's covered. So music therapy is a one-on-one, a therapeutic relationship. If you haven't been to a therapist, that's the purpose of your relationship with the person who's helping you is to help you through change in a therapeutic relationship with tools that we know work, evidence-based tools that work. The difference between music therapy and music care is that self-reliant bit. So I like to think of it as when you're not at the therapist, what are you doing for yourself the other 6 days of the week or however often you get to go, right? What are you doing to give yourself care that complements the therapy that you're getting? And that's a life practice for me, because when I wasn't at my piano lesson, I had a number of hours during the rest of the week where I had better be practicing, right? I'd better have something that helped me use the information that I got from my lesson in a practical way to improve my performance. So the idea behind music care is that if you need practical ways to keep yourself in the lane, keep yourself focused on the work that you need to be doing, music is a great way of doing that. And not just for stuff like intervening with things you don't want. The same music that helps you with intervention can also help you with growth. And that's a marvelous thing, because there aren't many modalities where just like taking a pill will dull the symptoms, right? But it doesn't actually open the way for anything else. That's up to you.
You have to essentially stop taking the pill. So,
you have to stop
under
taking
doctor's
the pill,
orders.
Right? When I was on right. And oh my gosh, and doctors, bless their hearts. So when I was having psychiatric care, we were trying, as things go, a bunch of different antidepressants. And some of them were okay and some of them weren't. And some of them gave me more of an opening toward what I wanted, the work I really wanted to do, than others. But none of them helped sort of light me up.
They help you dull a little, yeah.
Basically help you not be so depressed. Yeah, they're dulling it, but music is not a dulling mechanism. So music will help you reach your authenticity and reach your potential at the same time that it's intervening with whatever the issue is that you're working with. And the marvelous thing is that human beings are set up for that. We're just born that way. We respond to sound and rhythm. It's one of the primary motivators that's in our history, hundreds of thousands of years now. Sound happens, and our lizard brain is reacting to that sound and priming our systems for whatever we need to do to respond to that sound way before we recognize what the sound was.
Like a siren.
And like a siren, yeah, caught behind you with the siren going, you're going to get that, oh my God, you're going to get that adrenaline pop. And you'll hear it way before you recognize that, oh yeah, that's a police car. Oh yeah, it's behind me. I'd better pull over, right? So the cerebral cortex kicks in and you start to react. But if you know that sounds are that powerful and that intrinsic to who we are, oh, there's so much you can do with that. And you can do it for yourself. It isn't a matter of sitting with a therapist, although if you do that, that's amazing too. But music, as we all know, has this power. We talk about the power of music and all that. And evidence these days is so profound in terms of how music is affecting us physically, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually. And I'm going to use that word advisedly, because if spiritual is your thing, great. But if consciousness works for you, or other, or even in a case, everything that science doesn't yet know, just sweep all that into the spiritual category and you'll have it, So there's all of these aspects. It's holistic. The effects of sound and rhythm on us. And that's the amazing thing. With a little bit of understanding, you can take the love that you already have of music and transform it into a tool for your own self-care. And that's pretty cool, because music is everywhere and mostly, for the most part, free. Speaking as a musician, I wish it wasn't. However, if you've got Spotify or whatever, you can do this with no cost other than a little bit of your time to figure out what works for you.
Yeah, that's great. Can you maybe walk us through an exercise that has helped you with music? Maybe speaking from someone that doesn't have any musical ability.
Yeah, I know. It's there's no requirement that you can play an instrument to use music. Most of us who listen to it are just as in the lane as musicians. There's no separation on that. The rabbit hole, though, is as deep as you want it to go. So starting with songs that you love, because they're the most powerful. we needed research for this, but they actually have it. So the music you love is your most powerful music, right? Don't ask me to tell you what's powerful for you. You already know. And there was research. Okay, so putting that behind us. So the music that you love, your most powerful music, does things for you. And what it does for you is open you to an emotional experience. I think we all relate most closely to the emotions in music. Now, a lot of us get in the way of that and say, oh, I don't like that music. Wait a minute, we're talking about music you love. Okay, let's think about the music that you love. Do you have music that helps you enjoy? If you put on music that you love and it makes you feel happier than if you were just happy without music, that's good, right? Do you have music for sadness? A lot of us have music that's sad music, and unrequited love songs, the song from our 5th grade girlfriend or boyfriend, right? That, it was your song and now it's tainted forever because it was 5th grade, right? So we all have those sad songs. Do you have angry songs? Do you have scary songs? I mean, going to the movies to see a scary movie, if it didn't have the soundtrack, it wouldn't be as scary. So oftentimes you can identify songs for each of the big 4 feelings, the joy, sadness, anger, and fear. So here's the quick exercise. It's easy to put on songs that make us happy, right? We like happy.
Oh yeah, happy's good.
Happy's great. That's no problem with that. But what if you're feeling a little sad and you don't want to be? So we've been taught, I think, to intervene on that sadness by playing happy music. I don't want to feel sad, so I'll put on my happy music now. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's a great direction. Except that if you stuff too much sadness, you're going to wind up with this unexperienced well of a feeling that's just hanging around. And human beings don't contain feelings like that very well. After a while, they start to leak out. And if you've got too much stuff that's inside you, if you've suppressed or repressed too much of those emotions that you don't like or don't want, well, I mean, ask Adina, is that a problem?
It's a problem.
It's a problem. Hello, people. So here's how to shift the paradigm around. if you are experiencing a feeling you don't want, there's information there for you. It's nonlinear, it's non-binary, but your responsibility to that feeling for yourself is to let it flow. Put on some music that supports your feeling. Anger is a big one for me. I have I've had tons of anger, and I suppressed it as a kid. Remember that family, the dining room table? You couldn't be too angry around that table. So I had this practice of stuffing my anger. And along about my 30s, I had this giant unexperienced tank of anger that I was dragging around behind me, and it started to leak out, and not in good ways. One of the obvious ways was I turned out to be chronically depressed. Stuffing all that anger led to chronic depression for me. So I began to allow the anger with angry music on purpose. Anger's a tough thing. And
it's tough. It's complex.
Yeah. And I didn't have a lot of angry music available. I had classical piano music, and there's a lot of angry music in that, but I was feeling way more angry. So, I went to whatever was available, stuff that I had to find to help me connect with that anger in a healthy way. And it's really weird to say, well, if you're angry, you should, allow that anger to come up and experience it. But if you've got music on your anger playlist, you can sit with the music and allow that anger quite safely. There's no requirement that you go and act out on it, which was a much better alternative for me than having it leak out all over the place and bust things up where I didn't want them busted because I didn't know what I was doing. So I became conscious of this. And there's a lot of anger to release. Fortunately, there's a lot of music that supports that. So the paradigm shift is, if you have a feeling you don't like, put it to music and be with it for just a little while and see how that relieves that feeling for you. Then what? Once you've done that, then put on the music you want to take you to the next place.
So I was gonna ask, it's listening to music then with awareness, with greater awareness.
Absolutely. It slows you down, it centers you. We all talk about being in the moment. Wow, music will put you in the moment like nothing else. And I'm not talking about putting on music while you're driving. That's fine. Play music while you're driving. Not a thing. But this is an intentional practice. This is sitting down with the headphones on or with the stereo, whatever works for you, and being fully present with that music for the 3 or 4 minutes that it takes to hear it.
Yeah.
And that has been an amazing therapeutic practice for me. Saved my life. We talked about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I too truly believe in music. So I have hypnotherapy in my practice. And so I use hypno with a variety of disorders. And I have one classical music song that I play in every hypno session. And it's a beautiful song. And I think that it provides a sense of comfort, or at least it does to me when I was being hypnotized. And some people will ask to bring in their favorite songs, and that's great. I like that too. But it puts the frame around the container of emotions almost.
Yes. Yes. I like that because I've found it's very safe. I've never, by listening to music, taking the intentional practice and saying I'm going to listen to music, I've never been motivated by that music to do anything except just listen.
Yeah.
What happens after I've heard it is a different story. Then the motivations tend to be less on the negative side. I'm going to use judgment terms here, and more on the positive side. Because releasing all that negative energy leaves you with energy that's left. It just doesn't have the negative pull on it. It becomes useful energy that you can use. Like, if you hear the tiger roaring, you get the family together and escape to the cave and make sure the fire's on. That's a great way to respond to fear.
Yeah.
So these are sort of survival instincts that sound has used for hundreds of thousands of years to keep us alive, and keep us happy. And the neuroscience is all dopamine and serotonin and stuff like that. I mean, we can get into that too. But if that's curious for you, there's amazing information out there about it. But to get it home, to bring it home, your lizard brain has information for you that sound and rhythm are giving you. And we ignore that information at our own peril, I think. And it can get us into places where, well, I mean, look around social media. A pretty angry place. A lot of stuff leaking out on social media.
Oh yeah, people can get angry because there are no repercussions.
Yes, there's no consequences.
No consequences.
Except that there are, I mean, I have no trouble connecting with someone over anger. It's easy to be angry together, and that can do good stuff. Hey, it helped form America. That was one of the ways that America got formed. But it didn't get, those good things don't happen by rioting or whatever. That's just acting out.
Mm-hmm.
So the full presence of anger, when you take the negative charge out of it, is really powerful stuff. There's amazing things we can do with that. Same with fear.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, with sadness, and obviously with joy. Those are such incredible primary motivators for us that we have built-in superpowers to use those, provided that we allow it, provided we don't stuff it,
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of modern history has been about stuffing the things that don't serve, what people think of as the dogmatic community. And that could be a religious dogma, of course, but it also could be scientific dogma, and it could be social dogma, it could be political dogma, whatever, industrial dogma. That if you want to control people, try to control their feelings. So that's the flip side of this exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Are your feelings being controlled? Should they be? What richness is there for you if you remove your judgment from them and allow them?
Yeah, and I'm just wondering for our listeners how they could utilize this tool as part of their recovery.
Oh, great question.
Yeah.
There's this tendency in our world to think that if we do A, then the result will be B. And a lot of the times, in my experience with people in recovery, which is as a volunteer helping veterans play the guitar, I've seen over and over how nonlinear that process is. Most of the time, in that environment where I was volunteering as a guitar teacher, the people who are in that space are going through a defined recovery process. It's 12-step, whatever it is. They have a process for recovery from their substance abuse. So I'm talking about an adjunct to that. And what the adjunct does is it releases a lot of the angst, I guess is a good way of saying it. If you're in a place where you're being stuffed through a process, that can be stressful. And if you're being stuffed through a recovery process, you have the stress of separating from your use, right? You're no longer a user. You're in this process of recovery.
And that's hard in and of itself.
Those are huge.
Sorry to interrupt
no, that's
you. Yeah.
it's perfect. They're big stressors, right?
Yeah.
So what is it that you need to be able to do? You need to be able to release stress. And if music is a way to release stress, I mean, hello, newsflash. Does anybody out there not understand this already, right? So we go to music to relieve stress. But if you go to it with intention, you say, Bill, I'm in the process of recovery. I have all these stressors of my program, and I need to be able to take a little bit of the edge off right now, and I don't have a substance I can use. What do you have? And where do you go for your dopamine? Or what are you going to do? Pick up a guitar. So in the process of just making music or even just listening to it, you're able to confront those feelings that are coming up in a way that says, hello, feelings I don't want. Let's experience you. Okay. And let's let you go. And then let's see what the nonlinear, non-binary, you could do this without judgment kind of results turn out to be. And oftentimes, I'll have people who are working in agencies say to me, gosh, Bill, after your music class, the clients were much more attentive. They were more focused. They seemed less emotionally fuzzy.
Dysregulated.
Yeah, they're more clear. Yeah. And it's not a matter of being like up or down regulated. It's just a matter of being more present, I think. And if music helps you get to this place of presence without the stressors or the angst, well, that's a lovely thing. So you don't teach a veteran to play the guitar because it does all this stuff. You teach them to play the guitar because with that guitar, they can give themselves this treatment anytime they want.
Yeah.
And if that means they're going through recovery or they're post-recovery, post-program, but still in recovery, that tool is an amazing tool to be able to give you some sense of I don't want to say peace. That's the wrong thing. Some sense of balance. Let's say that. It helps you lay out the guardrails. If you bump up against one, you've got music to help release that angst and get you back in the lane.
So as we get close to ending our time together, I want to share with you a quote that I absolutely love, and just kind of get your reaction to it. Without music, life would be a mistake.
Wow. Wow.
I know.
Gosh, I don't think you could have one without the other, because here we are, we're vibrational beings. Our cells are vibrating, the atoms inside the cells are vibrating. The whole universe vibrates with light or darkness or whatever that's our paradigm as organisms that inhabit this physical world. So there's always, in fact, I read recently that they've been able to measure the sound of space. Outer space has a sound. Isn't that crazy? There wouldn't be this without vibration. And that vibration, whether we see it as light or hear it as sound or can't perceive it at all, like X-rays and gamma rays and all those other fun things, it's vibrational energy. And so the music of the spheres is, in fact, the thing that animates all of us. It's part of what makes this whole thing fly.
Thank you for that, Bill. What are some of the best ways to reach you and find out all the great work that you're doing in the community?
Oh, gosh. Well, if you're working with Adina, amazing, good for you, because, you can always ask her. Who was that guy?
I'll write you a check and mail it later.
And I'm out there. Best way to find me is at the Quest. I have a online quest that helps people go through this process of understanding what music does for us and build up silver bullet playlists for anything that is on the table, stuff that you want to feel or stuff that you want to do, from fear to gratitude to kindness to whatever. You can track anything to an emotion and support that. So that's what the Quest is all about. Quest.musiccare.net. Pretty easy to find me. And it's the old-fashioned quest, like the quest for the Holy Grail, the QUEST. Yeah, there we go. .musiccare.net. And then once you're there, there's free stuff. There's all kinds of things. Clearly, you can sign up. You know how this works. This is the internet age. So, and you'll know how to spell my name, because I'm there too. And then you could Google for me, and the rabbit hole is really deep, guys. So, feel free. There's ways to reach out to me directly. I think our toll-free number is on all the websites. So feel free, call me, because I'm here for you. That's how it works.
That's great. Well, once again, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
Truly, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bill. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Atheists in Recovery podcast. For more great info and to stay up to date, head over to atheistsandrecovery.com.